Now, the Palin Update with Kevin Scholla presents Liberty and Legacy. Here's Tamara Colbert.
America's liberty is rich in legacy, with characters so courageous we almost forget our founding heroes were men and women just like you and me. They raised and set freedom's bar so high that discouragement today comes from thinking that is unattainable again. Human DNA was created with a forever liberty gene. Our nation was raised up by God, the creator of that gene, who used ordinary men and women to accomplish something extraordinary. A country where individualism and liberty was respected and revered. This week I began rereading Dr. Ben Carson's book, America the Beautiful, Rediscovering What Made This Nation Great. I have been watching Dr. Carson in earnest since his decision to get into the presidential race, and I have not been disappointed. In this book, he details the dangers we face today as a nation are just as great as those we faced in the past. And he wrote this book with the desire to reawaken the spirit of greatness that created the wealthiest, most compassionate, freest nation the world has ever seen. But this week, the Cato Institute's Human Freedom Index came out, and unfortunately, the United States has fallen to 20th place. According to the index, the freest nations in the world in the top 10 are, in order, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Finland, Denmark, New Zealand, Canada, Australia, Ireland, UK, and Sweden. The U.S. is the only English-speaking country to rank outside the top 10. It is no wonder why Donald Trump is number one in the presidential candidate race with his Make America Great Again message, and Dr. Ben Carson surging at number 2 with his anti-establishment Unleash the American People message. The reasons for America's dramatic drop, according to the Cato Institute, are many. With the expansion of the regulatory state, a drop in economic freedom, high taxes, war on terror, war on drugs, and the erosion of private property rights due to greater use of eminent domain. The Cato Institute sees a direct correlation in the amount of freedom in a nation with economic prosperity and human well-being. But the most frightening realization they have come to is that freedom in America is regressing, going backwards. We are becoming less and less free. Every day, we have progressives on both sides of the aisle in power. Thank you, President George W. Bush and Barack Obama, for the decline in American freedom overall. You both own it. Not solely, but together, you own the majority of what's happened to this nation in the decline in the last decade. There is only one way to get back to the American ideal. Prayer and asking God for principled leadership with God-fearing, common-sense Americans who are willing to step up from the local to the federal level. In 1787, when the Continental Congress was wrought with tension and fighting between the delegates, the first 3 days were madness. They couldn't get anything done. So Benjamin Franklin, 81 years old, asked the Congress to turn to God, telling them that if God governs the affairs of men and knows when the sparrow falls, it is sure that an empire cannot rise without his aid. And of course, the rest is history. We know what happened after they dedicated this nation to God and their work in 1787. America began because our founders and millions of other people believed that we were not meant to be sheep to follow a king or a government ruling class. Our founders did not put "In me I trust" on the dollar bill. They put "In God we trust" for a reason. Today, the fundamental shift in our government is because for generations, we haven't been teaching our kids the true history and spirit and courage of freedom, of those who fought and sacrificed to give it to us. Add that to the secular society removing God from our schools and our government buildings and the media, you have hopeless people adrift who have forgotten to turn to God and instead are turning to government. Self-determination and celebration of freedom has now turned into self-centeredness and slavery to government freebies, like an Obama phone, food stamps, and general welfare that has enslaved entire families and communities for almost 4 generations. Freedom must be pursued and elevated and respected and proclaimed to every citizen and traveler who sets foot in America, boy, I want to work for the next president with a business card that says Champion of Freedom on it. That's all I want to do, is share America's message of freedom and liberty and hope. We should all want that. We should have welcome posters at every single airport and border crossing that says, "Welcome to the nation of freedom, opportunity, and justice." But this takes a conscious daily effort to positively remind ourselves and those around us that America's next great century is only up to us and none other. On August 24th in 1814, British forces invaded Washington, D.C., burning the Capitol, the White House, and many other buildings. The president's wife, Dolly Madison, became famous because she insisted that they take the Gilbert Stuart painting of George Washington from the White House and get it to safety first before she would leave. To Dolly Madison, that painting of George Washington wasn't a painting, but a proclamation to the people of this country about a man who risked and sacrificed everything at every turn in the founding of this blessed nation. There's a document housed in the Library of Congress today, written on parchment more than 200 years ago at the same Continental Congress where Benjamin Franklin asked them to turn to God. This document is only paper if we let the ideal that is America die. We must choose today to be Dolly Madison when it comes to the Constitution, because it is more than words. It is the basis of our liberty and the bedrock of our legacy. It is time to use the Constitution to save the Constitution, and it can only be done by we the people. The Convention of States Project is doing just that. I encourage you this week to visit conventionofstates.com to learn more. I want to know what you think makes America great. You can tweet me at Tamara Colbert, hashtag Mama Grizz Radio, and share your thoughts. For Mama Grizzly Radio, I'm Tamara Colbert.
Tamara Colbert in Texas. Tune in for more Liberty and Legacy next week. And to learn about Convention of States, head to conventionofstates.com. Now our weekly commentary, Steel Resolve. Here's Sarah Steelman.
Thanks, Kevin. Political pundits just can't get enough of Donald Trump. They have spent literally hours trying to figure out why Trump is leading in the polls. The Washington political class just can't understand why any voter would consider voting for this man. But is it really that hard to understand? Trump is a man who actually takes action. He builds stuff. He does stuff. He really and truly believes in America. People are hungry for somebody who quits talking and starts doing. They are sick of Obama's constant criticism of the American way of doing things. Trump recognizes America's problems, but he is optimistically ready to tackle and solve those problems. Over the weekend in Iowa, he captured the imagination of those who turned out to see the Trump show. The little boy who got to take a ride on his helicopter encapsulated what resides in America's heart. He tugged on Mr. Trump's sports coat and asked him, "Are you Batman?" Without hesitation, Mr. Trump said, "Yes." Yes, Batman, the Dark Knight, the billionaire businessman from New York, knew what it took to clean up America. He had a keen sense of justice and wasn't afraid to take on the bad guys. Mr. Trump, in his own way, is the Batman of American politics. He has a dark side, but he knows what it takes to make America great again, and he's not afraid to do it. Perhaps the voters want the Dark Knight to rise again. This is Sarah Steelman for Mama Grizzly Radio.
Tune in again next week for another segment of Steel Resolve right here on the Palin Update. The Palin Update, including Liberty and Legacy and Steel Resolve, is on demand and available for download. So just head to mamagrizzlyradio.com, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. Visit mamagrizzlyradio.com for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, like Mama Grizzly Radio on Facebook and follow along on Twitter at Mama Grizz Radio, at Kevin Scholla, at Tamara Colbert, at Sarah_Steelman, and at 3DSTS. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I want to thank Sarah Steelman, Tamara Colbert, and everyone here at Mama Grizzly Radio. Thanks to CJ Pearson, and thank you for listening today. A special thanks to our sponsor, 3D Security and Training Academy. Visit 3DSTA.com. The Palin Update is produced by Lena Anderson, the Andy L. Kramer, and Lorianne Lewis. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update right here on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.